There is a strange kind of restlessness that lives in many of us. It is not the kind that comes from boredom, nor from a lack of achievement. It is deeper, a quiet, persistent feeling that somehow we are not yet who we could be. We go to work, meet friends, pursue goals, but behind the curtain of our daily lives, there is an unspoken question. Am I truly living the life that was meant for me, or am I simply playing a role written by others? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, believed this tension was not just a personal inconvenience, it was the very heartbeat of our inner growth. He called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are beneath the masks you wear and the expectations you've inherited. Jung understood something both liberating and unsettling. Your greatest potential is not found in imitating the lives of others, nor in following every impulse of the moment. It is found in a dialogue between the conscious self you know and the vast unconscious that shapes your dreams, desires, and fears. Throughout history, philosophers from Socrates to Nietzsche have echoed this same truth in different forms. Socrates urged, "Know thyself," as if self knowledge was the foundation of all wisdom. Nietzsche spoke of becoming who you are, a call to shape your life into a unique work of art. Jung took these ancient echoes and gave them a modern psychological depth, revealing the inner architecture of self realization. We will not approach them as abstract theories, but as living principles you can feel and apply. By the end, you will see that your true potential is not a fixed destination waiting somewhere in the future. It is a living process, already unfolding inside you, and the question is whether you will answer its call. So, let us begin the journey inward. There is a moment, and perhaps you've felt it, when life seems to pause for a fraction of a second. Most of us ignore these moments. We shrug them off, dismiss them as random, and return to our routines. But Carl Jung believed these whispers are messages from the unconscious, the vast and mysterious realm that shapes far more of our lives than we realize. Jung's insight was radical for his time. Your conscious mind is not the captain of your life. It is more like the tip of an iceberg, with the deeper part of you, the unconscious, steering far more than you can see. Dreams, symbols, slips of the tongue, even sudden emotional reactions. These are not meaningless accidents. They are signals from that hidden depth. To realize your true potential, Jung argued, you must learn to listen, not with the ears, but with the kind of attention that notices patterns, moods, and metaphors in your life. Your conscious mind is that king. The unconscious is the living kingdom below. Jung suggested three practical doorways into this realm. Dream work. Dreams are not random static, but symbolic stories. By recording and reflecting on them, you begin to see recurring themes, your unconscious speaking in its own language. Active imagination, engaging with images or inner figures that arise in your mind, letting them speak and reveal their meaning rather than suppressing them. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem too personal to be chance. Jung saw these as the unconscious breaking into the fabric of our daily lives. These practices are not about superstition or fortune telling, they are about attention. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is the tension at the heart of our first insight. We often believe we are fully awake, fully in control, yet so much of what drives us remains unseen. Old wounds, hidden desires, forgotten dreams. To live our fullest potential, we must allow this deeper voice to speak, even when it says things we do not expect or want to hear. The paradox is that your unconscious does not always guide you toward comfort. Sometimes it reveals the truth you have avoided. Sometimes it points toward paths that will disrupt your current life, but it will always point toward your wholeness. Here's the challenge I leave you with for now. Tonight, when you close your eyes, treat your dreams as a letter from a part of you that has been silent too long. Write it down in the morning without judgment. Then ask, what is this trying to tell me about who I could become? For those willing to listen, the unconscious is not a dark, chaotic ocean. It is the voice of the self calling you home. We are all, in some way, actors on a stage. We dress the part, speak the part, and behave according to the script we believe others expect from us. This role is what Jung called the persona, the mask we present to the world. The persona is not inherently false. In fact, it is necessary. Without it, we couldn't function in society. It helps us play the roles of friend, parent, leader, or professional. But the danger comes when the mask fuses with our identity, when we forget that it is only a mask. Think of a young professional who becomes known for being the reliable one at work. Over time, she begins to hide any signs of struggle or fatigue because it doesn't fit the image she's built. She says yes to every request, suppresses her real feelings, and eventually loses touch with what she actually wants. Her persona has become a prison. This happens in countless ways. The man who plays the tough one, but secretly longs to express vulnerability, the student who plays the overachiever but hides creative passions for fear of seeming unserious. These masks protect us, but they can also suffocate us. Breaking free from the mask does not mean rejecting it entirely. It means recognizing its limits and daring to live beyond it. This often begins with small acts of honesty, telling someone what you really think, admitting a need for help, or pursuing an interest that doesn't fit your public image. Here's a metaphor. Imagine your persona as a beautifully decorated mask worn at a masquerade ball. For hours, you dance with others, trading polite conversation, feeling accepted. But after a while, the mask feels heavy. You long to breathe the open air outside, where no one is watching, where you can be entirely yourself. That longing is the beginning of individuation. The question then becomes, what would my life look like if I stopped performing for approval? This is not about reckless rebellion. It is about deliberate alignment. Sometimes this means keeping the mask in certain settings, but choosing not to live inside it. Soft CTA. If this resonates with you, if you've ever felt trapped by the role others expect you to play, I invite you to subscribe. Here, every week, we explore ideas that challenge the scripts we've been handed so we can write our own. To break free from the persona is to remember that you are more than the image you project. You are the actor, the stage, and the play itself, and the story is still being written. So tonight, take a quiet moment to ask yourself, which mask do I wear most often? And what part of me is waiting behind it, asking to be seen? There is a saying often attributed to Jung, the gold is in the dark. It is a paradox. The very parts of ourselves we fear or deny often contain the richest treasure for our growth. Jung called this hidden realm the shadow, everything within us that we reject, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge. It might hold traits we consider negative, anger, selfishness, jealousy, but it can also contain positive qualities we have buried because they don't fit our self image, such as creativity, sensuality, or assertiveness. The shadow begins forming in childhood. When we were praised for certain behaviors, we kept them. When we were scolded or shamed for others, we hid them away. Over time, we built a self image designed to gain approval and pushed everything else into the dark corners of the psyche. But here is the truth: the shadow does not disappear, it waits, and it often makes itself known through projection, seeing in others what we cannot accept in ourselves. That colleague whose arrogance enrages you, that friend whose boldness you secretly resent, they may be showing you qualities your shadow contains, whether you've suppressed them or longed for them. Jung warned that ignoring the shadow does not make it harmless, it makes it dangerous. Unacknowledged, it seeps into our lives through impulsive decisions, destructive relationships, or sudden outbursts we later regret. The parts of ourselves we exile will return, but as intruders instead of allies. Meeting the shadow is not about indulging every hidden impulse. It is about bringing these parts into conscious awareness so they can serve us instead of sabotage us. This process requires courage. To turn toward the shadow is to admit, I am not only what I wish to be, I am also what I fear and deny. But in doing so, you discover that the shadow's darkness is not pure evil, it is undeveloped potential. Philosophically, this echoes Nietzsche's idea that one must embrace chaos within to give birth to a dancing star. Psychologically, it is Jung's individuation, becoming whole by integrating, not erasing, the parts of the self. Here instead a practice Jung might suggest: observe your triggers, notice strong emotional reactions to others. Ask, what does this say about me? Dialogue with the shadow. In journaling or imagination, let the suppressed part speak. Listen without judgment. When we meet the shadow with honesty and compassion, we stop living as half versions of ourselves. We reclaim the energy we once spent suppressing these traits and redirect it toward building the life we are meant to live. The question is not whether you have a shadow, you do. The question is whether you will meet it as an enemy to be feared or a teacher to be learned from. Remember, the gold is in the dark. Some moments in life feel strangely familiar, as if you've stepped into a scene from a story written long before you were born. The challenge you face feels like a trial from an ancient myth. The mentor who appears at just the right moment feels like a character from a timeless tale. Jung believed this was no coincidence. At the heart of his psychology lies the concept of archetypes, universal patterns of human experience, living deep in the collective unconscious. These archetypes appear in myths, legends, dreams, and even modern movies. They are not literal beings, but symbolic forces that guide and shape our lives. There is the hero, called to leave the comfort of the familiar and face trials that lead to transformation. The wise old man or wise woman, offering guidance and insight when the path is unclear. The shadow, testing us with challenges we'd rather avoid. The lover, awakening our capacity for connection and beauty. These archetypes, Jung said, are like inner landmarks. If we learn to recognize them, we begin to see our own life not as a random sequence of events, but as a meaningful journey, a personal myth unfolding. Consider a time when you were faced with a choice that required courage. In that moment, the hero archetype was alive in you, urging you to step forward. Or recall a season of mentorship when someone's wisdom helped you find your way. The wise guide had appeared in your story. These patterns are ancient because they are human. Joseph Campbell, deeply influenced by Jung, famously mapped the hero's journey, showing how these archetypes shape not just stories, but our very growth. But Jung's emphasis was personal. These forces are not outside you, they are you. The challenge is that many of us live without recognizing these inner guides. We face difficulties and think, why is this happening to me? Instead of asking, what part of my deeper story is trying to emerge here? To follow the archetypes of growth means paying attention to the symbolic layer of your life. It might mean keeping a dream journal to spot recurring figures. It might mean reflecting on which archetype feels most active for you right now and which one is calling to be developed next. Think of a current struggle or desire in your life. Then ask, who is the guide or inner force that could help me take the next step? This shift in perspective changes everything. Challenges stop feeling like meaningless suffering and begin to feel like necessary trials in the forging of your character. But there's something more profound here. Recognizing these archetypes helps you trust your own inner guidance. You begin to see that life is not just something happening to you, it is something happening through you. And that brings us back to Jung's vision of potential. Your truest self is not built in a straight line. It is revealed in a series of chapters, each one calling forth a different inner power. The archetypes are the companions, tests, and revelations along the way. When you know how to follow them, you stop wandering aimlessly and begin to walk your myth with intention. Most of us spend our lives trying to resolve our inner conflicts. He called this the tension of opposites. Within you are contradictions, the part that craves freedom and the part that longs for security, the part that seeks solitude and the part that yearns for connection. Most people try to suppress one side and live entirely in the other, but Jung warned that doing so leaves you incomplete. True potential, he said, emerges when you can hold both forces, allowing them to speak, to challenge each other, and eventually to integrate into something new. Here's Spetz's story. A woman Jung once worked with felt torn between her desire to be a devoted mother and her longing to pursue her artistic career. She thought she had to choose one and sacrifice the other, but through analysis, she began to see that these two forces, though seemingly in conflict, were both parts of her. By finding ways to weave creativity into her family life and letting her role as a mother enrich her art, she discovered a deeper wholeness than either path could have given alone. Philosophically, this idea echoes Hegel's dialectic, the belief that progress comes from the meeting of opposites, creating a synthesis that transcends them both. Psychologically, Jung saw this as essential to individuation, the conscious and unconscious, the masculine and feminine, the light and shadow, all must find their place in the larger self. Practically, embracing the tension of opposites means resisting the urge to prematurely solve every inner conflict. Instead, you learn to ask, what truth does each side of this tension hold? What might emerge if I listen to both? It also requires patience. Holding tension is uncomfortable. It is far easier to collapse into one extreme, to become entirely logical and ignore emotion, or to live only in feeling and neglect reason. But extremes leave us lopsided. Integration gives us depth. Jung often spoke of the transcendent function, the moment when, after holding the tension long enough, a new possibility emerges that was invisible before. This is not compromise, it is creation. It is the birth of a third way. The next time you feel torn inside, remember the goal is not to kill one voice and crown the other king. The goal is to let the dialogue transform you. And here rests a guiding question to take with you. What if the part of you you've been trying to silence is not your enemy, but the missing piece of your strength? When you can hold the light in the dark, the joy and the grief, the boldness and the humility, without trying to erase one, you begin to move toward the wholeness that is your true potential. If there is one thread that runs through all of Jung's work, it is this: the ultimate goal of human life is not to become perfect, it is to become whole. Jung called this process individuation, the unfolding of the self into its fullest expression. It is the moment when the different parts of your psyche, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, persona and authentic self, begin to work together in harmony. But here's the paradox: individuation is not something you achieve once and for all, it is a living process. You do not graduate from it, you live it moment by moment, choice by choice. An individuated life is one in which you are no longer driven entirely by other people's expectations or by the unexamined forces of your unconscious. You are guided by an inner compass, one that is uniquely yours. This does not mean rejecting society or cutting ties with others. Rather, it means participating in life from a place of deep authenticity. Think of a river flowing toward the sea. At the beginning, it is narrow, forced to move through channels cut by the land. As it flows, it gathers tributaries, new experiences, insights, and challenges, widening and deepening until it becomes its true self, a strong, unstoppable current. Individuation is this widening, the river becoming fully itself, not by abandoning its source, but by fully embodying its nature. Living an individuated life often means making choices that others might not understand. Jung noted that this path can feel lonely at times because it requires you to leave behind the comfort of conformity, but it also brings a profound sense of meaning, the feeling that your life, in all its complexity, is yours. Here sips what it might look like in practice. You notice when you're slipping into a role or mask, and you gently step back into authenticity. You listen to dreams, intuition, and inner signals as much as to logic and external advice. You integrate your shadow, owning your full range of qualities and using them consciously. You see life's challenges as part of your personal myth, not random misfortunes. You make decisions aligned with your inner truth, even if they defy conventional expectations. Philosophers like Nietzsche would call this self overcoming, the continual process of shaping oneself into a work of art. Jung gave it a psychological depth. You are not creating yourself from nothing, but uncovering the unique pattern already woven into your being. To live the individuated life is to say, in essence, I am willing to be myself, not the self I was told to be, not the self I pretend to be, but the self that I am in full. This is not the easy path, but it is the path on which your potential ceases to be an abstract dream and becomes a lived reality. Here's a question to carry forward. If I truly lived as the person I am meant to be in all my complexity and truth, what would I start doing tomorrow? And what would I stop doing? The individuation process asks you to live in answer to that question, not just once, but every day. And in doing so, you step into the rarest kind of freedom, the freedom to be exactly who you are. We began with a simple, unsettling question. Am I truly living the life that was meant for me, or am I simply playing a role written by others? Carl Jung's answer was not a quick fix or a single breakthrough moment. It was a journey, one that unfolds in layers, through challenge, reflection, and courage. We have walked through six of his most powerful insights: the call of the unconscious, learning to listen to the subtle voice beneath the noise of daily life, the masks we wear, recognizing the persona as a useful tool, but not mistaking it for the self, meeting the shadow, facing the parts of ourselves we hide, and transforming them into sources of strength. The inner guide, recognizing archetypal patterns that reveal our deeper life story. The tension of opposites, holding contradictions until they transform into a greater wholeness. Living the individuated life, walking the path of authenticity, guided by your unique inner compass. Each of these is a door, and together they open into a life that is not merely lived, but inhabited, a life that is not dictated solely by the expectations of others or the unconscious repetition of old patterns, but shaped consciously with depth and intention. Jung never promised that this journey would be comfortable. In fact, he warned that the path to wholeness often requires facing truths we'd rather avoid. But he also knew that the alternative, to live cut off from our deeper self, is a slow erosion of the soul. The invitation here is not to change everything overnight, but to begin noticing. Notice the dream that lingers in your mind. Notice the mask you wear too long. Notice the shadow that speaks in irritation, jealousy, or longing. Notice the archetype alive in your current season of life. Notice the tensions you want to avoid and instead hold them gently. Notice when a choice feels like it belongs to you and not just to the script you were handed. Each act of noticing is a step toward individuation. Each moment of honesty with yourself is a movement toward your potential. And here is the truth: Jung left us with your potential is not a distant mountain you must climb. It is a seed already planted in the soil of your being, waiting for your attention and care. The more you tend to it with awareness, courage, and authenticity, the more it becomes impossible not to grow. In the next week, choose one small act that aligns with your true self, not your mask, not your fear, but your wholeness. Do it quietly, without fanfare, and notice how it feels to live that way. If these ideas have resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe. Every week we explore not just the theories of great thinkers, but how to live them in the mess and beauty of real life. And if you have reflections or questions, share them in the comments. This isn't just a channel, it's a conversation, a shared journey toward becoming who we truly are. Because in the end, as Jung knew, the most important thing you can do for the world is to live your own life fully. And in doing so, you give others permission to do the same.